Hey, hello, welcome. Glad everyone made it. It's actually kind of nice out this time. You notice that after our little cold snap? But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about today the mind and body connection and what that actually is and how you can interact with that consciously. Now, it sounds very, very kumbaya. You know what I mean? The mind and body connection, very warm and fuzzy. But before we go into it, I want to talk about the different components or the different parts that we're going to be dealing with. The players on the team. Okay, so first up is your body. And a lot of times you'll look at your body as kind of like this meat suit that you're wearing, that physicality of you. But in actuality, your body is comprised of energy. And now, if you look at it from a standpoint of, can everyone agree with me that we're made out of molecules? Okay, and we all went to science class and we all know that atoms are what make molecules. Now, what make atoms are subatomic particles of energy. So that's your protons, neutrons, and electrons. So you really are an energetic being. You are really, it's not just this big mass that you think it is. And that's important to know. Now, the one thing that's really important when we're relating to the body is that it has a brain. And when I say that, that's a very powerful thing, because you have a brain. Your brain is just like a supercomputer. And it runs the body, and it makes everything go and works out your logistics and does all the things that it does. But the one thing that it doesn't do is it doesn't create new information. It only works off of what's been programmed into the computer. So that's all it's limited to. But you're always being programmed 24 hours a day, because every single thing you hear, see, smell, taste, experience is part of your programming. But any type of information that you take in, anything that you learn, anything that you engage in, it's also going into the programming. So that's, kind of how you operate. And the other thing that your brain does that's really powerful is that it doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, which is in one way kind of scary. But the point is, with that, if you look at it from this standpoint, have you ever watched a scary movie and you knew it was a movie and you knew it was an actor and an actress, and you knew you saw on the thing at the end of the movie, it said no one was injured during the filming of this movie? So you know everything's fine, but when that co-ed with the candle is going down the stairs to the ex-murderer, you're screaming at the phone, at the TV, telling her, no, don't go down there, don't go down. You're just, actually your heart's racing, your adrenaline's going, you're really into it, it's only your imagination. So your imagination actually got your body to produce adrenaline, it got it to dump cortisol, it got it to do all these chemical dumps, got your heart racing, got all these things going on just because you thought something. You didn't physically move a muscle. Yet you're sweating, you're getting all red in the face. It's just, you can get really reactional to different types of movies, whether a sad movie or a scary movie, but you physically have a reaction to something that you just simply think. And that's pretty powerful. And if that doesn't demonstrate a mind-body connection, nothing will, because I think that's really powerful. But just touching back to the programming part, when you watch television, you're being programmed. When you listen to the radio, you're being programmed. Whatever you're taking in is actually going in there. But there's something that is kind of dangerous, and I thought I'd just throw it out here. If you fall asleep while you're listening to or watching television, you just kind of got your eyes closed, you're just listening to it, and then you go to sleep, you're going to wake up and you're going to really have cravings for a Bud Light and some pharmaceutical drugs, okay? Because all those commercials that you were listening to went in unimpeded. There was no discernment on, I don't need that, or that's ridiculous type of thoughts. No, it just goes straight into your subconscious. So what you listen to when you're asleep is more important than actually even what you're listening to when you're awake, if you look at it from that standpoint, because it's going to, go in there as fact, because you didn't have a chance to dispute it. So that's, kind of scary, but it's, I think, a good thing to know. That's why I just kind of wanted to throw that in there. Now, when we go back to the brain has something. You know, the body has a brain, and the brain has a mind. And the mind is energetic, so it's just kind of outside of the body, and that's what interacts outside of you, so you can get new information and move forward. But now with the mind, it's also kind of just, well, it runs the brain, and it's kind of your higher self, basically, your higher consciousness, if you will. And now those are the players on the team here that we're going to be dealing with on this. So if you're looking at, you know, again, just try to link the mind and the body, what has, you know, which one's which and how is this linking, and I want you to kind of try to follow that a little bit as we go through. Now I said earlier, you know, when you hear like a mind-body connection kind of a thing, you know, you kind of get the warm and fuzzy, right? It just seems very like you want to sing Kumbaya or something. You know, it just kind of has that to it. But in actuality, the mind and body thing, it's more like a war than a happy camp place, okay? Because the mind wants to be in charge, and it should be. But the body wants to be in charge, and it definitely should not be, all right? It's not a good plan. You cannot have that in charge. You got to remember, you look at the body, what's it made out of mostly? Anybody? Water, right. Okay, and I'd say, what, 70%? Is that a fair guesstimate? You know, I've heard a lot of different numbers, but that's pretty safe, right? Okay, what does water do? Yes, it seeks its lowest level. All right, so that means if you can sit down, you will, and if you could lie down, that would be even better. All right, so that's your body, okay? Now, what else? Now, what animates your body? Current, right, through the nervous system. So what does current do? It seeks the path of least resistance. So I hate to be the one to break the news to you, but your body is inherently lazy, all right? It just biologically, that's just what it does. And the mind kind of wants to go a little further. You know, it wants to do things that are uncomfortable because the body craves comfort. Let's put it this way. If you start to overheat, what does your body do? It turns on a cooling system. It starts sweating, try to cool the body down. I mean, it's, again, very all about comfort. It'll do everything within its power to be comfortable. And it's just, you want that though. You want your body on your, wanting to make sure that everything's fine and everything's right, but you also have to have something like your mind to override it. And that's really important. Now, again, the mind always wants a little bit more. But now, let's say the body says, we need to exercise. You know, you can just picture this conversation going on between your mind and your body. You know, mind comes to your body and says, okay, we're going to exercise. And the mind's like, are you out of your gourd? Or the body's like, you're out of your gourd because I don't exercise. That's uncomfortable. And I'm all about comfort. I don't know if you remember this, but I'm all about comfort. Okay? That's the body. And that's going to stay, you know, he's going to stick to that very, very firmly. But at the same time, you know, you want to do something more to actually improve, but your body's not necessarily really willing to cooperate. Plus, if it's uncomfortable, it's not only uncomfortable, it's actually painful. And it could actually hurt for days. So that's really, really uncomfortable. So, you know, the body's definitely not on board. And then you take it a step further. Now you're going to actually have to run your cooling system and sweat to cool you down because you just got all heated up. And so the body just really doesn't want to do that. It just wants everything good. And so if you can actually get it to move, now you're in business. And that's what the mind's job is to do, is to kind of get the body to engage and to do something more than it normally would want to do. Now, to kind of aid the mind in kind of seizing control of the whole project, you have to develop your nervous system. That's the key to it, because the nervous system is really associated with your willpower. And it's also your animation. You know, that current goes and then you move, right? It fires off the muscles. So it's really important that you have that strong central nervous system and that everything's firing, and that actually helps make you more willing to move, more able to move. It really does play a big role. Now, if we take a different angle on this, now, have you ever heard the term thoughts are things? So they actually have they cause some things, right? Okay. Now, do you know that every time you think a thought, that you actually release a chemical, whether a neuropeptide or hormones, but you're going to release things. It might just be straight up cortisol, your death hormones, because you're in fight or flight. Or you could be thinking thoughts that, make you really happy and you're releasing endorphins. So, it's actually a really positive thing. So I'm not saying this is good or bad, it depends on what you're thinking. So if your thoughts will have an effect on your body because it's going to bring about, that chemical release. And then that chemical release is going to determine whether it's a healthy thing for your body or an unhealthy thing for your body. But either way, you're getting something. So it is really important just to be aware of that and know that your thoughts actually do have an effect on things. And I mean, a lot of this is everything I talk about we could delve into really far. We could talk all night on that single thing. But just so if you have questions on things that we discuss, because there's always more to it, you'll have a chance towards the end and you can kind of just go through a question and answer. So just kind of hold on to those and don't forget them so we can do them at the end. Now, what else do thoughts do? What do they lead to? Before that? Emotions. Okay. Now, emotions, again, also are triggers. And so your thoughts are triggering things. You're going into emotions, and now your emotions are starting to trigger things. So you got a lot of things going on here, all right? And it's all just because you were just thinking something. All that's taking place. Now, we talked about different emotions that you can have. Now, let's say that you have the emotion of worry. All right, what is that going to do? What's the one thing that everyone associates what kind of ailment with worry? Ulcers, right? The ultimate. So, when you worry a lot, you tend to have stomach issues. And different emotions trigger different organs. And and some of you are probably very familiar with this, some of you maybe not, but there's the 5 elements theory. And what it does is it's basically, you have 5 energies that inhabit your body and that actually are your body and make it do what it does. But you have the 5 elements: metal, water, wood, fire, and earth. All right, and each of those have a solid and a hollow organ that they're associated with and that they actually affect more. And then there's basically every aspect of your body is covered within those 5, but they each get one hollow, one solid. And so if we have worry and we wind up with an ulcer, then that only makes sense that you have an issue with your earth energy because that's who's responsible for that. And so you can always trigger that. You go, okay, I'm worrying. Okay, I got to watch out for my stomach and my spleen. It's kind of a reaction to it. And I think that's, and again, this is really a deeper concept. And again, this is a lifelong of learning type of information. You can get a general understanding, but then there's always more that you can learn, always further that you can take it, different places that you can go with, your understanding of it. But that's kind of your 5 elements. Like I said, the one that's worry is your stomach. Now, it really, I don't know if are you familiar with like acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, all of these systems, healing systems? They all operate off of the same principles and the same concepts. It's the same meridians, same acupressure points, same balance that you're trying to bring. Because what you're ultimately trying to do is bring balance to those 5 elements within your body, which technically then would take care of your whole body. Everything would be covered, everything would be in balance. If something's a little bit too much, you got to bring it down. If something's a little deficit, you have too much of a deficit, then you're going to have to bring that up, in those areas. But it is systematized so that it's an alchemy, so you can kind of figure it out. So it's not like you have to study for 50 years to figure this out. No, once you got the general idea, it's almost, I don't want to say simple, but what it does is it is very common sense orientated. So as you go through that and you see, well, I'll give you an example. I mean, we were talking about the scary movie, right? And you get afraid. But that fear is also associated with one of these energies. And that's water. Water is responsible for your kidneys and your bladder. And then you Then fear is the emotion that it's a negative emotion. So in other words, you're out of balance, because there's a positive one too. Okay, but the negative one for water is fear, and the positive one is deeper knowledge. And that quest for understanding. But if let's say you get really scared, or a 6-year-old gets really scared, what do? Kind of wet themselves a little bit, right? So it was their bladder. They got afraid. They felt fear that affected the bladder, and there was a result. So I mean, that's what I said. It's almost common sense. It's very just very logical. All right, scared, bladder, bad things. It just, and the same with the stomach. Worry, stomach, ulcer. You can kind of see that pattern. But if you can identify these things early enough on that, as it goes, now you can actually get to it before it becomes an acute situation. Because really all you want to do is just kind of bring things into balance, make those minor adjustments, not have to go radical with it. But you have to see it or catch it early enough on in the process that you're going to be able to do something about it without anything major going on. Is this starting to are you getting the picture of what I mean by the whole mind-body connection, how those things are intertwined, and then also too just kind of how energetic your body is? You wouldn't think it just looks pretty solid. But it really, I mean, if you think about the way that it grows, regenerates things, it does a lot of things, something just solid like a rock isn't going to be able to do that. So there has to be something that's causing those changes, and it's because it's energy, so it has flexibility. It can change. Now, when we looked at the body, we just really identified just how all about it is. Your body is all about your body. And kind of its reaction to things and the things that it wants to and doesn't want to do, gives you resistance. You can see that it definitely is very physical. You know what I'm saying? I just want it. It's an addict. It's addicted to water, oxygen, food, sleep, and a couple of other things. And if it doesn't get those, it dies. So, I mean, and so you kind of want it to be a little selfish and a little self-centered on this. I mean, it is in your best interest, but at the same time, you have to be able to override it. You want that physicality, and you want it being attended to, and you want someone looking out for you like your body, right? But you also, again, if that's all you were, then that would be a pretty lonely existence, because all you'd be concerned with are your necessities, the things that make you you, where your mind allows you to be a little bit more about others, thinking about higher things, more challenging things that are not just going to be comfortable. And again, our body just wants to be comfortable. But when we go to the brain, again, a supercomputer. The brain is actually, if you ever really study it and learn all the ins and outs of the brain, all the stuff it does, it's absolutely amazing. You know what I'm saying? Your body is too. It's just the things that it does and just how tight it runs, and it just really is truly amazing. So you have these things, but you just got to get them firing in the right order. Because when your mind is in charge, all things are well. Okay? When the body's in charge, look out. Or you're not going to be doing anything. But it's definitely not going to end well. All right? So it's really critical that you kind of get that order. And that's just through physical training, moving your body in the right way, developing yourself in the right way. That will kind of bring up that willpower. Once you got the willpower going, now you're willing to take action. Now you're willing to do things. It's really a much more empowered place. Now, when we go into the 5 elements, again, that is a very in-depth subject, and I mean, it is a lifelong study, but if you can kind of just get the general, like the broad strokes, if you will, on how that works, you can have a working knowledge pretty quickly, actually, because it's not learning something that doesn't make sense and you got to convince it to make sense to you. No, it's so logical you think that it can't be that simple. And once you can lock into that, you can kind of follow it, see where it goes. Now you can work with it, because really, when I said earlier, I mean, we were going to talk about that, the fact that there is a mind and body connection, that's a real thing, and I think we've kind of identified examples of what would look like real things, right? So you can see the connection is pretty clear, it's pretty much common sense. But at the same time, if you know, you go through that, and it's just a matter of, you're not going to know it all. Okay, it's kind of like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You have to just chip away at it, otherwise it's just enormous. But if, you just have the basic, you know the 5 elements, you know the different things that are associated with it, you have a little bit of an idea how to work back and forth with them. You know, a lot, that's in your Qigong practice, in your Tai Chi practice. It's really powerful. You know, those that are students that have Pao Ge or 8 vessels, very powerful for the nervous system. So, you know, these are all things that, you know, a number of you actually have these things and are training with them. So that's kind of what you get out of that. And then really, so it just comes down to 3 things. You know, you have basically your self-awareness of all of this, the education so that you actually know what you're talking about or what you're thinking about, and then the willingness to take some action on it. Get the nervous system into action there and actually start going somewhere with it. But you need all 3 of those, and then you're good to go. All right, but again, you don't have to have all of it all at once. Just have a little bit of self-awareness, have some understanding or education on it, and some desire to move, and then you just kind of build from there. But again, that's how you're actually working that back and forth. Now, there's a lot in all that, and I just kind of just dumped it all on you. But so I'd like to kind of go through and just see what questions you have in any areas of that I can kind of, you know, make a little clearer for you.